All right, hello everybody. There we go. All right, so this lesson I'm going to be going over with you guys some great picking patterns that are awesome to use as a beginner. So if you're just starting out on the guitar, maybe you've been at it for a little while and you never really got into picking. Maybe you've got strumming down, you got rhythm down, but you never have gone so far as to add picking, finger picking into your playing. It's really a lot of fun, and it really makes you sound like you've moved to the next level. Okay, so it's really a lot of fun to do, and so I want to teach you some really simple strum picking patterns, finger picking patterns that are great to get started on. And I'm going to give you 4 of them, and maybe an extra one if we have time. I might do a bonus one as well. But I'm going to use, I'm trying to give you some that are for different time signatures so that you can have a picking pattern to use for most time signatures, okay? At least the ones that are most popular. So that's what I want to cover with you today. So as I'm talking about these things, if you have any questions for me about finger picking or any other questions in general about guitar, just let me know in the chat section and I'd be happy to answer that for you. Okay, so the first one I want to look at is called the inverse picking pattern. And these names are, I just came up with these names, okay? So I just labeled them to where they are easy to remember. So you're not gonna find this anywhere else on the internet. You'll probably find maybe this picking pattern somewhere else, but it might be called something different, I'm not sure. But this is just what I labeled them as to help remember them, okay? So the inverse picking pattern is a pattern in 6/8 time. And what's gonna happen is we're gonna have 3 beats in one direction, and then we're gonna have 3 beats in the other direction. And that's why it's called the inverse pattern. So we're going down for 3 beats, and then we're coming up for 3 beats, okay? So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be using our thumb. And this is something that's going to be foundational across all the picking patterns that you use, okay? Is whether it's, no matter what picking pattern it is, you have to remember this thing right here, is that you need to start on the root note of the chord. So whatever chord you're playing, your picking pattern is always going to start with the root note, and you're going to hit that root note with your thumb, okay? So you need to remember that because that is key, and it's going to be the same for all of the picking patterns, okay? So this is, I get the question a lot, well, how do I know what is the root note for a particular chord? Well, it's always going to be, if it's a C chord, then it's the C note. If it's a G chord, then it's the G note, and so on, okay? So that makes it easy. But when that's hard to know if you don't know the notes on the guitar. So let's say we're playing a G chord, for instance, okay? The G note is going to be that low E string right here. So it's always going to be, your root note is always going to be either the low E string, the A string, and sometimes the D string if you're playing a D chord, okay? But really, I think that's the only time you're going to go that far down for your root note, okay? So for any kind of D, whether it's D major, D minor, D7, your root note is the D string. So your E and A string are not part of that chord, so you have to start there, okay? But really, that's the only time you have to start on the D string. For an A chord, you start on the A string. For a C chord, you start on the A string. Let's see, for the F, okay, so for the F chord, you start on the D string, okay? Now, if ever you're in doubt, when you're looking at a chord chart, like the little diagram, you'll usually see a minus sign or an X over the E, over the low E string and the A string, letting you know you're not supposed to play those strings, okay? So if ever you're in doubt, you just look up that chord, look up the F chord, and it'll have the E string and the A string marked off with an X or a minus sign, something like that. And that lets you know those strings are not part of it, which means the next string down is going to be your root note, okay? So it's always going to be, your root note's always going to be the lowest register, the deepest pitch, the lowest pitch note that you can find, except if it's minused off, then you go to the next lowest. Okay, so that's the way to figure out which string is going to be your root note. Okay, and once you do this for a while, you'll figure it out, and it'll just become second nature. Usually, you know, if you're pressing down on the low E string, then that's going to be your root. Okay, because you're not going to be pressing down on a string if you're not playing it. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to give you some examples. I think all of my examples are going to be in the key of C. We'll see. But right now, I'm going to use this inverse picking pattern I was talking to you about. And I'm going to play the song Unchained Melody. Oh, that one's in the key of E. So Unchained Melody, I'm going to be using the key of E. And that's going to start on the E string. That's going to be my root note. Okay. Now for the inverse picking pattern, remember we've got 3 beats down. So right here it's going to be 1, 2, 3. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm playing the E string, I'm skipping the A string, and I'm going to the D string and the G string. Okay. 1, 2, 3, like that. And then I come back 3 beats up, like that. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, with my index finger. So 3 beats down with my thumb, 3 beats back up with my index finger. And in this case, I'm playing the high E string, the B string, and the G string. Okay? Like that. Okay? So that's the inverse picking pattern. Now, the reason I'm skipping the A string, you can play it, but the reason I like to skip it is because it really makes that root note prominent. It really makes it resonate clearly. If you play the A string, it kind of gets muddied up, right? The sound, you kind of lose that resonance of that root note, okay? Which is, that root note is establishing what key you're in. So I like to skip the A string just to let that deep E resonate clearly, okay? So again, that's how the song starts. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Down, 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 up, up, up. Okay, and then I switch chords from there to the C sharp minor chord, and I'm playing a power chord here. And if you don't know these chords, you can get them from my chord family cheat sheet on my website. It's free for download. So this is part of the E chord family. We're going from E to C sharp minor, and this is a power chord. And for this power chord, we're not playing the low E string. We're starting on the A string, okay? So in this case, I'm playing A, D, G, okay? That's my 3 going down, and same thing coming up, high E, B, G. Oops, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, okay? And then I think I go to B after that, B suspended, and it's the same progress here, A, D, G, E, B, G, okay? And then I go to A2, which is I'm plucking the same strings as the last 3 chords, okay? And then back to E. All right, so just that E is different, where I'm starting off on that low E string, okay? But the picking pattern stays the same throughout the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and for that song it would be, let's see, oh, my love, my darling. We'll go to A. I hunger for your touch. Okay, and I have a tutorial for that song using that picking pattern. You can all go and listen to it if you want to hear that picking pattern more clearly. Okay, so that's the inverse picking pattern. It's a great one to start with because it's easy to understand. Okay, let's see. Mohammed, I see why B and E in my guitar has broken. I'm not sure what you mean. Maybe you can clarify that question for me. I'll move on until I hear back from you. So that's the song Unchained Melody. That's the inverse pattern. Let me go to the next picking pattern, which is I'm calling it the back and forth picking pattern. Okay. So the back and forth picking pattern is in 2/4 time, which means we have 2 beats basically that are repeated over and over again. And a song that uses this is "Ain't No Sunshine" by Bill Withers. And basically, this is a nice, easy pattern because we're playing the root with our thumb, just like we did last time, and we're playing 2 other strings with our index finger and our middle finger. Okay. So for "Ain't No Sunshine," we're in the key of A minor here. So this is what the pattern is. So we have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and that's it repeated. Okay, so my thumb is hitting the root, and in this case, I'm playing an A minor chord. So my root note is going to be that A string. Okay, so I'm hitting that with my thumb. And then my first and second finger are hitting the B and the G string at the same time. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, and then from there I go to the E minor chord, and for an E, any kind of E, that low E string is going to be my root. So now I'm switching my root from the A string to the E string. Okay, but I'm hitting the same 2 strings with my first and second finger, the G and B string. Okay. All right, and then I go to the G chord after that, and I'm going to hit the E string with my thumb and the same 2 strings with my first and second finger, and then I'm back to the A minor. Okay, so that's a nice, easy pattern right there. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Let's see, I think at some point we go to D minor. And so when we go to D minor, yeah. So we go to D minor, and so for there, remember, for any D, the D string is going to be our root. So we're going to hit there, skipping the E and A string. Okay. Now I can also, if I want there, I can move my first and second finger down to the E and B string, just to have that that difference in pitch from a lower register to a higher register pitch. You can play it. You can play the same 2 strings as before. It's not really going to matter, but just keep that in mind. So let's see. I think we go to E minor. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. She's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Yeah, like that. Okay, so that's the back and forth pattern. And another song that uses that is a song called "Your Hands" by J.J. Heller, which is in the key of C. It's a little bit faster. I have unanswered prayers. I have trouble I wish wasn't there. I've asked a million ways. Let's see. I've asked 1,000 ways. And you would take my pain away. Okay, so that's another song that uses that pattern. So that's a nice fun one to play. Nice fun one to learn. Okay, so that's the back and forth pattern. Let's see, let's go to the next one. The next one is the outside-inside picking pattern. Okay, so the outside-inside picking pattern is a 4-beat pattern, and whenever you're learning music, 4/4 time is going to be your most popular time signature. Okay, so the next 2 that I'm going to show you are in 4/4 time. And so the outside-inside pattern is basically what the name implies. We're going to play outside, the 2 outside strings. So we're going to be playing 4 strings, 1 for each beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first 2 beats are going to be outside the outside strings. And then the next 2 beats are going to be the inside strings. Okay. So if I'm playing a C chord, the root is the A string. So that's where I'm going to start. Okay. And then the next beat, I'm going to play the other outside string, which is going to be, in this case, the B string. I'm playing these 4 strings, right? The A, D, G, and B. So the first one I'm going to play for beat 1 is the root note, A string. Next one, the B string. And then I'm going to play the 2 inside ones with my thumb and then my index. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Outside, outside, inside, inside. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? That's a nice, easy one. And you can use this for any 4-beat song that you want to slow down. So it could be, you know, if you go on the song library on my website and you can narrow the search down to songs that use the driving pattern or the folk pattern. Those are both strumming patterns that use that are 4 beats. And you can take that and you can use this pattern instead and you know, slow it down a bit. So for instance, let me just give you an example. Recently I came out with the tutorial Angels We Have Heard on High, and that uses the folk pattern. And so instead of using it as the folk pattern, we can use this one, and it'll just kind of slow it down, mellow it down a little bit. And so basically it would sound like this. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Okay, so it's the same song. I'm just using that picking pattern to make it more mellow. And when I'm going to G, remember for that I'm switching the root. So my thumb hits the E string for the G, but everything else is going to stay the same. So after that, my middle finger is hitting the B string, my thumb comes and hits the D string, and then my index hits the G string. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm skipping the A string. Okay, so that's how I play that. Okay, so that's the outside-inside pattern. Now let's see. Let's do the last one, which is the staggered picking pattern. Now this one is very similar to the one we just did. It's just a little bit different, and again, you can apply it to the same songs that you would apply the outside-inside pattern. But basically the way it works, if I'm using a C chord, is I'm going to play the same 4 strings, and I'm going to start with the root, just like I did before. But this time, let's see, I'm going to use my index finger to hit I'm going to skip a string and hit the next string. So we're going from the A string to the D string, and then my thumb is going to hit the one before it, which is the D string, and then my middle finger is going to hit the B string. So it's staggering. So I'm going from here to here, then backing up to here, and then jumping a string and going to there. Okay, so I'm basically staggering back and forth, right? So it's like 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 3, 2, 4. If I were to count the strings, 1, 3, 2, 4, like that. Okay. Now I can do that picking pattern for that same song, Angels We Have Heard on High. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains. Okay, so same idea there. It's just slightly different than the one I was talking about before. Okay, so great. Now that's the 4 that I was talking about, and I've got plenty of time, so I'm gonna show you one more. Okay. This one is a popular one for a particular song. What's the song called? Blackbird, is it? I was going to say Freebird. No, that's not right. So you know this song right here. Let's see. Okay, so that song uses, obviously I'm picking here, But I want to talk about the foundation of that pattern, because you can use it for that song, or you can use it for other songs as well. You can use it as a four beat pattern. And basically what we're doing is my thumb is hitting the root, just like all these patterns. My thumb is hitting the root of the chord at the beginning of each measure, or every time I switch a chord. Okay, so it depends. If a chord is only lasting for half of a measure, then I'm gonna repeat that root whenever I'm switching chords. Okay, so anytime I switch a chord, I have to re-hit that root note. So we're establishing that we're switching chords. Okay, so let's use that same pattern for Angels We Have Heard on High, what we've been using. Okay, so let's say I'm using, again, 4 beats per measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically I'm hitting that thumb, I'm hitting the root on 1, okay? And then I'm hitting my middle finger and first finger are going back and forth between the B and the G string, okay? So for beat 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And every time I say 1, my thumb hits the root, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Oh, hit the wrong string. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's the basics of that pattern. And if I were to use it for Angels We Have Heard on High, it would be Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains. Okay, so that's the idea for that pattern, and it's just used a little bit differently for that Blackbird song. Where I'm hitting that root a lot because I'm changing very often. Sometimes every 2 beats I'm switching chords. But every time I switch a chord, I have to let everybody know I'm switching by re-hitting that thumb on the root. Okay, so. Okay, so that's the idea behind that pattern. Now, as you can see, there's some things that are similar with all of these patterns, like with your thumb. Okay, your thumb is always going to be hitting that root because that's what's going to let the listener know what chord you're on, right? And that's very important. And so that's going to be something you'll see is the same across all of these patterns. And so it's good to start memorizing where is the root note of these chords that I'm playing. Okay, and so that's where you should start with that. Okay, now let me see if there's any questions. Thanks, Matt. Glad to hear that. Glad you're liking the teaching. Your strings are constantly interrupted. Your B and your E string. I'm assuming you're talking about the high B and the high E string. I'm not sure exactly what chord you're talking about. If your fingers are getting in the way, maybe. I'm not sure how to solve that problem for you without seeing what you're talking about. Let's see. Let's see if there's any other questions. Playing very easy. Awesome. Glad you're liking the lessons. Yeah. So David, that's a good point to make. Anchoring your pinky on the guitar. If you're talking about your picking hand, yes, I do anchor my pinky on the guitar because that gives me a nice gauge to know where my hand is in relation to the strings. So especially for picking patterns, because you kind of have to, sometimes you're moving around, and if you're going from an E chord to like a D chord, your thumb has to move from here as the root all the way down to the D string. So having your pinky anchored to the body of the guitar is a nice way to just keep your hand stable so you're not hitting the wrong strings. Okay, and you could do that too with even even when you're strumming, you can use that. You know, if you're not strumming really hard, sometimes having that pinky, anchoring your pinky down, is a great way for you to give that gauge for your hand, so you know, so you can be more accurate with the strings that you're hitting. Awesome. Let's see. Can these be applied to Garth Brooks songs? I'm not sure. Probably, you know, it can be applied, at least the last two that I talked about can be applied to 4-beat songs. So I'm not that familiar with Garth Brooks songs, but I think I might have one tutorial of his on my website. But if it's a 4-beat song, yes, those last two can be applied to them. Obviously, with finger picking patterns, you're going to be slowing things down, because usually, if you're going to be doing finger picking, it's not going to be for an upbeat song. At least for, you know, when you're playing finger picking for acoustic guitar, it's typically going to be for slower songs. And if you're taking a song that doesn't use a picking pattern and then you're applying a picking pattern, it's probably going to slow it down some. Okay, and that's just the nature of it. So, you know, if it's a slower song and it's a 4/4 time signature, then you can use the outside-inside pattern or the staggered pattern. If it's in 6/8 time, then you can use the inverse pattern. And if it's in 2/4 time, then you can use the back and forth pattern. Okay, and you can apply those to any song that's in those time signatures. Okay, great. All right. Well, I hope that helps you guys out. And I know, you know, we covered a lot, so you can always go back and watch this replay if you want to write things down and take notes on all these different patterns, and then try to apply them to some songs and see how you like it. All right, guys. Well, I hope that helped you out, and I'll see you guys later. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the chat, even after it's over, and I hopefully try to get to as many of your questions as I can. All right, y'all take care. See y'all later.